I'm Alex Uhas, and I did mine on theaters in prison. Theaters in prison are not necessary, is what I believe, and that's the side that I chose to take. With most people in prison being murderers, child molesters, rapists, violent offenders, drug users, I think it's just kind of absurd that they should be able to get to enjoy the luxury of theater. So money can be spent elsewhere is another point where I'll be touching on in this presentation. And there are also better ways to rehabilitate the inmates, which are drug programs, schooling, and religious services. So theater is not necessary for life in prison. Prisoners get to participate in something that most high school students don't get to participate in, which I think is kind of wild, because even in my school, we had a theater club, but there was no theater class like I had here at Mount Union. And 66% of prisoners are in for serious crimes, and that was found on the BOP's website. And they are violent offenders for drug crimes and sex offenses. Money can be spent elsewhere. So money can be spent elsewhere in the education system, either giving them GEDs, trade school, or even in religious education. And the poorest of public schools getting on average $1,200 less per student than wealthier schools. That was found from SAGRAD. And 80% of schools get funding spent on technology and teachers' wages. And most teachers, when they get into a high school or anywhere, don't even have the chance to get situated. They're already looking for another job because they're not making that much money. And the other place money can be spent is in the prison system itself. Prison systems are grossly underfunded, and the money can be spent on the upkeep of the prison, which would just be making it more clean and habitable for the inmates, more secure facilities, so keeping the inmates safe and keeping the guards safe especially, reducing recidivism, and recidivism is the rate at which prisoners return once they're released, and guard salaries, because the guards are also very underpaid for the job that they do. So Cullen and Johnson's rehabilitation theory. There are 5 points to this theory. The first point is the intervention is undertaken by the correctional institution. Their second point is the intervention is planned and is designed to have specific features. The third point is intervention targets change in the factors that are causing the problems of criminality, which would be the drug problem. You'd have a drug rehabilitation program for their drug problem rather than a theater program to try and help with their drug problem. The next point is that intervention's main goal is to reduce recidivism, which I stated before is their rate at what they return. And the last point is rehabilitation also may help to improve the offender in other ways. For example, making him or her a more educated and psychologically healthier person. So other programs, GED programs that prisons can do. If the prison gives an inmate an education, it can give them skills in order for them to, once they're released from prison, get a good job and ultimately not have them return into the system, which is a huge thing when trying to reduce recidivism. And religious programs, which these types of programs work on changing the criminal's mindset to better them as human beings, and also give them something to believe in, or not to mention religious programs are easily go along with the fifth point of the Cullen and Johnson's theory, which is bettering themselves as a whole mentally and physically. And in conclusion, the theater program lacks in improving specific areas that are causing the problems, so substance abuse and a theater program wouldn't really work together. And finally, prisons would also need to bring in an outside person to teach the theater to the inmates, because you can't really have an inmate with no knowledge of theater teaching theater to inmates who don't have any knowledge of theater. And to wrap it all up, just saying that I think it's pretty crazy that individuals in society would think it would be a good idea to give theater to inmates who have committed crimes and not give it to high school students. And those are my references.